Hello there, everybody. Had a little trouble getting in here today. For some reason, it said my link was invalid. Um, Welcome back. It's a nice, wonderful Wednesday. I just walked my dogs. It's like 36 out there. It's all like summertime. We were talking about listening. And so that's where we're going to pick up today is where we were talking about barriers to listening and reasons why we aren't the best listeners in the world, as we are all very well aware. Come on. And we were at information overload, that theory that we are bombarded constantly with all of this information and we become numb to it. And we do. And because we become numb, it causes us to not pay attention as well. We don't retain as much. And it just, at some point, we just have to say enough and walk away and take some time to decompress. That's one of the best ways to deal with information overload, is finding time to walk away from it, turn off, all the cellular stuff. As fun as it is to be on there, at some point you just have to stop. And that should help overcome some of that. If you remember that one video that Xerox had, they seriously realized this is a problem. We've got to address it. People are just going to continue to become mind numb and not be as productive. And companies that have actively sought after that kind of thing have seen improvements in their productivity and their efficiency, because employees are a bit more engaged because they do have that time to walk away and just kind of de-stress and decompress and relief, feel relief. So we're going to look at 4 more barriers to listening, 4 more barriers that cause us to have terrible retention and help us fight that lack of concentration, that ability to pay attention to one thing longer than 7 seconds. And so the next one that we're going to talk about is one that in face-to-face conversations, I see this sometimes in class, and it's sad that I see it, but it's called glazing over. And you're talking to somebody, and even in conversations, you may notice this. You're talking to somebody and you get this look back. And I know that's a really creepy drawing, especially knowing how I did it. But you can see that their eyes are open. They are appearing to pay attention. It looks very similar to pseudo listening, right? But they're completely glazed over. And what's happened is, if you remember what brain speeds are and how our brain operates, they're in that 700 words a minute zone, right? You're talking to them, and instead of paying 25% attention or a small amount like they normally do, they've gone off into the 700 words a minute land, where their brain is daydreaming and they're thinking about other things they could be doing, and tests that are coming up and all kinds of other stuff. And they've gotten so far off into that 700 words a minute land that they're just paying zero attention to the 100 words a minute. And you can tell it on their faces. They're gone. I mean, there's a shell there, and that's like all there is. And really, to combat that, you almost have to like shake them. Hey, are you paying attention to me? You have to pop them out of that glazed over look, because as long as they're in that, their whole focus is over in the 700. It's a lot easier to ignore 100 words a minute speed than it is to ignore 700 words a minute speed. And they've done what we showed when we talked about the goldfish. They've got lower attention span than a goldfish, and that 700 words a minute thing grabbed them and sucked them away. And now their eyes are on like that, but they're not gathering anything. So it's something we have to be. It's more of an awareness factor. Being aware when you're talking to somebody, looking at them, they're not paying attention anymore. And it's not just that they're pseudo listening. They're not listening to anything. They're off in la somewhere. So they're daydreaming, and you learn how to be aware of that, and then throw something odd at them, or say, hey, are you paying attention at all? Ask them a direct question and pop them back in, kind of like we do with some of the other barriers. Then the next one, this one's one that we do a lot. And actually, in a conversation yesterday in my other 102 class, this came up real early. And the person who brought it up was extremely frustrated because they run into this one a lot. And what this is you're in a conversation with somebody and you're talking to them, and then you kind of get done with what you're talking about, and they start talking. And while they're talking, what you're focused on is not what they're saying. You're focused on what you're going to say next. And so you're just thinking, okay, what I really want to say next is this and this and this. And God, I wish they'd quit talking so that I could say what I want to say. And the whole time we're focused on what we're going to say next, we're missing everything they say entirely. And they do the same thing back to us. So they're focused on what they want to say next when you get done talking. And the problem there is you could actually have two people having two different conversations with each other at the same time, and neither one's listening to the other one at all. So, if you go back to the action model of communication, they're both in action mode. They're encoding and they're sending out messages. Neither one of them's decoding, figuring out what the message is. There's no listening at all involved. All they're doing is concentrating on blurting out messages. So you're more of a sender than anything else. In that clip, if you remember back to Monday's class, I showed you that clip with Sheldon and Amy, and she wants the butter, and he's all fixated on his game, and he doesn't know which kind of game to get. And he's talking about this constantly. And she says, can you get the butter? And he actually gets up to go get the butter, but he's so engrossed in what he wants to say about this game that he just stands there holding the butter. And she realizes it's going to be a chore to get this butter. So she does that sort of active listening with him. But you could see he is constantly focused only on what he wants to say, to the point that he sets the butter down to the side and sits down again. He could just have easily set the butter down on the table in front of them, right? But he doesn't. He sets it to the side and continues on with his conversation because he's so focused only on what he wants to say. He's completely ignored the fact that she asked for butter and he's got it in his hand and could give it to her. And it's a problem from a communication standpoint because, again, nobody's really connecting. Your communication isn't effective because it's not truly communication. It's more just broadcasting. Two people are broadcasting and there's nobody taking in signal. Another really good example, and this is again from Big Bang Theory because I pull a lot of stuff from there. This is Sheldon and his roommate Leonard. And Leonard comes home with a very specific problem that he's trying to deal with. And Sheldon has a completely unrelated, different problem that he's dealing with. And they try to have a conversation to help each other out. And it perfectly demonstrates this whole rebuttal tendency problem. So let's take a look.
Play. 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 Play.
What are you doing?
Trying to use a Jedi mind trick to control Stephen Hawking. Play. Play. Ugh. He must be wearing a tinfoil hat or something.
I did a bad thing.
Does it affect me?
No.
Then suffer in silence. Play. 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 Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking.
Penny started taking a class. She wrote a paper. She didn't want me to read it. I went behind her back. I read it anyway.
Stephen Hawking hates me.
I don't know what to do. The paper's terrible. But if I tell her, she'll know that I read it, and she'll get really mad.
I was beating him so bad he doesn't want to be friends anymore. Why does everyone love me except Stephen Hawking?
Is it possible we're having two different conversations?
How would I know? I'm not listening to you.
Hang on. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Chess clock. We each get 5 minutes to talk about our problems. We'll take turns. Each turn will consist of a statement and a helpful response from the friend. Begin.
I humiliated Stephen Hawking in a game of words with friends. He stopped playing. And now we're not friends anymore.
He's probably busy. You're worried about nothing. Give it a couple more days. I'm sure he'll play, and you'll see that everything's fine. My turn. I can't let Penny hand in a bad paper, but how do I tell her it's bad without letting her know that I read it?
Beats me. Now, I know Hawking's not busy because I can see he's playing other people right now.
Maybe since you're so good, he's taking his time to meet the challenge. I want Penny to enjoy school.
Wallace told me he's a big baby. I didn't know that, and I played extract for 82 points. Oh, it's all Amy's fault. She told me to play it. I've got to cut her loose.
Sheldon, I wasn't done talking. She hands in the paper tomorrow. I know I could help her, and she's my girlfriend. I should be allowed to help her. Why aren't I allowed to help her?
Yeah, I hear you, brother.
You need to give me some advice.
Fine. Women, huh?
No. Specific to my situation.
Blonde women, huh?
Empathetic.
It sucks to be you.
I quit.
Leonard, wait. No. I listen to your dumb thing. Leonard, come back. Leonard, come back. Leonard, come back.
What?
Oh, of course. It only works on the weak-minded.
It's funny in situations like that, but when we're really trying to have communication with somebody, rebuttal tendency can be a serious problem because, as you saw, you can have completely unrelated conversations going on and nobody's listening to the other person. And, that concept that Leonard pulls out, that chess clock idea, isn't far from being a good way to deal with the situation if you think about it. If you follow what he suggested, you talk about your problem, and the other person has to empathic listening, use empathic listening to understand how that person's feeling and really listen to the situation. And you set a certain amount of time for that, and then you switch, and you can actually have a conversation where both are involved and having meaningful conversation. But you have to focus on doing it. So it requires more of the mind. You can't do it in passive listening mode, obviously. And passive listening mode is anywhere from that pseudo listening to, glazed over. But you can get more involved in what you're paying attention to. Okay, this is my time to listen to you, to understand and really try to help. And then I'm going to do the same thing for you when the time comes up for that. So the chess clock idea is not far from being a good way to deal with rebuttal tendency. The trick is you have to realize when you're in the conversation, wait a minute, I said something, they said something back that was completely unrelated. We've done that back and forth about 3 or 4 times. We're not really having a conversation. We're just out here broadcasting in the same room, which is a very different thing. And you see this one a lot too on social media. Right? I mean, especially in the last year, we were coming up to a big election and you had people who kind of knew what they were going to do and all they wanted to do was broadcast their ideas. They didn't really care what anybody else's ideas were. They just wanted to keep hammering home their ideas. And that's sort of a form of rebuttal tendency. All you're thinking about is what you want to say next, and what the other person's saying doesn't matter at all. And so obviously retention is terrible, which it is. You don't pay attention to them because almost all of your brain power, that 70, 100 words a minute, is being focused on, as soon as they shut up, I'm going to say this. And like I said, you've probably run into this in your own lives, multiple times. And it's a big problem for worthwhile, meaningful conversations and communication. So the next one is closed-mindedness. And this one can be related somewhat to rebuttal tendency. In closed-mindedness, the person that you're talking to on whatever the issue is already has their mind made up. They know things are how they think they are, and there's no other real options. So they've made up their mind, and they're not going to listen to anything else. Just by the definition of that, it means it's very difficult to have a meaningful conversation with somebody like that, right? Because their mind's made up. And a lot of times people feel like, well, there's no hope. There's no way to deal with that. In actuality, this clip down here that you're going to see in a minute talks about a way to do that. You can deal with people who have a closed mind and they've already made up their minds up about how certain situations are by asking questions and by being interested in what they have to say. So you have to initiate that active listening and really concentrate on, okay, I'm going to listen to what this person has to say. I may not agree with them, but I'm going to listen to them. And I'm going to try to understand why they feel that way. So it's a use of empathic listening where you're trying to listen for feeling and you're trying to get them to understand that you're genuinely interested in what they have to say. And when people feel like they're really genuinely being listened to, they sort of, their mind automatically opens up a little bit because you've shown an interest in hearing what they have to say and learning why they feel the way they are. And by continuing to ask questions, which is a form of active listening, you continue to ask questions about their opinions and their points. And as they bring it up, they start opening up your mind and you can start inserting other possibilities and asking them why that doesn't gel with what they believe. And then slowly you can almost hear it. The mind opens up and they get to where you can have a meaningful conversation. You may still not change their minds if it's something that you're on opposite ends of the beliefs on, but you will at least be able to have a meaningful conversation. You might get them to think a little bit about your point of view, and you gain the ability to think along the lines that they're thinking, not necessarily to agree with it, but at least to understand their point of view. And understanding is a big part of good interpersonal communication and good interpersonal relationships. So this clip does a nice job of looking at how do you go about doing that.
It's called the persuasion cycle.
And what that means is when you're with someone, you want to move them from resistant to doing, resistant to you, to listening to you, to considering what you have to say, to being willing to do what you've talked about. They're doing it, and then being glad that they did it. And if they're glad they did it, they'll tell other people. Does that make sense? And so the whole book is about how do you move people through that cycle. What do you think is the posture, if people were being honest, when someone is resistant to listening and resistant to you, in your mind's eye, what's their posture?
Hands crossed.
Hands crossed. Where are they looking?
Around.
Around, up at the ceiling.
You get the that whole expression like.
Oh. Yeah, like this. Oh, I'm really engaged. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. There was an old song when I was growing up, the hip bone's connected to the thigh bone, blah, 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 blah. Well, the way people's outward posture is connected to their inner mind's eye. So when someone is resistant, if in the conversation you can get them to use their hands because their words don't say enough, they will open their arms in their mind. So what that means is when you're networking with someone or you're meeting someone, try and think of any of the words they've used that are either have hyperbole, like never, always, awful. So try and think of those words that they've said, or if the inflection of their voice goes up and they just talk more adamantly and they may not use hyperbolic words, but they have more, or they're using hand gestures. Often those people are expecting you to get into a competitive talking to them, right? And so what you do is you pause just for a little bit, because there's going to be what they're really wondering is, did they make an idiot out of themselves? And what you do is you pick one of those hyperbolic words and say more about never, the never thing. What? Yeah, say more about the never, or the if only. Say more about that. And what will happen is, in your mind's eye, if they were geared for one of those not listening, competitive, networking kind of things, they vented, they dumped, whatever. They were expecting you to do it, and the last thing they're expecting you to do is hit me with some more of your stuff. So when you say more about that, what you will see is they'll kind of flinch, but they'll go a level deeper. And as they go deeper, in my book, Just Listen, there's a number of things that I call conversation deepeners. So as they go deeper, they may feel uncomfortable that they're starting to reveal stuff, but they're actually feeling good because this is starting to feel actually like a real conversation. And so one of the conversation deepeners is really, or if any of you go to Shrinks, I'm going to ruin it right now, if you go, And what means, not but it means I'm chewing on your words, keep talking, this is making sense, I'm actually enjoying it, And then they go deeper and deeper.
And so what's interesting about that is, and I didn't talk about that, but he did talk about the fact that you get them, the body posture, and we haven't talked about nonverbal yet, but the body posture, a lot of times when they're closed-minded, they do this, they'll cross their arms just like he did. And you're creating a physical barrier, and the mental suggestion, the nonverbal cue is, my mind's made up, you're not going to change me. And as he points out, you start asking questions because, like he said, they've unloaded, they've dumped their stuff, and their expectation is you're going to dump yours. So like on social media, you put your post, somebody will put their post up, and it's very one-sided to what their beliefs are, and they fully expect, trolls do this a lot, they fully expect that someone's going to come along and put up the opposing view, and then they get to butt heads for a while, and that's really all they're after. And so they'll dump their feelings and they'll cross their arms back and go, let's see what you have. And they're expecting you to sort of do the same thing, but you can lead by example. You can say, wait a minute, and ask questions about it and show that you're trying to understand their point of view better. And they feel like, okay, I can release a little bit more, what I believe and how I feel about this. And our subconscious natural tendency will be to open those arms back up and use our hands and gestures. And when you do that, even in your own mind, you're just opening up to this other person. And that means your mind's opening up as well. And you can coax them out of this I'm not budging mode by showing that you're willing to listen to what they have to say. And as you probe with questions and stuff, then they kind of feel like he said, you're getting into a conversation, and you can start working it into things that your side of it as well. So you can present your ideas and you actually end up having a meaningful conversation. And I've done this one with people who had especially opposing political views, and they'll say what they say, and they know my political views aren't like theirs at all. And I'll say, no, wait a minute, explain to me this, because I want to understand how you see things. This is intriguing to me. And they're like, oh, you're showing interest in me. And they start opening up, and you get them open a little bit, and they draw out some more information from them, and you have that conversation, and slowly they kind of withdraw from their little shell. And then you can have a meaningful conversation. And again, you never are going to convert anybody over completely, right? You might get them to at least respect the fact that you see it from a different point of view. And instead of butting heads all the time, you at least reach a point where we're going to agree to disagree, and you still have the respect between two people. And now you've got much more meaningful interpersonal communication. So closed-mindedness is not an automatic showstopper. It's one that if you take the time to work with it, you can overcome that barrier, and you actually gain a lot. You might not ever change to their point of view, but you'll understand it a lot better, and you'll be able to appreciate why they feel the way they do. And in my own situation, my wife and I differ greatly in a couple of different subjects, and we've talked about it quite a bit. And this technique is how we got there. And we can talk about things that we both know we don't agree on, and present different points of view, and have very good conversations, knowing full well that neither one of us is going to budge. And it doesn't lead to fights and that kind of thing. Usually closed-mindedness will lead to button heads and fights, but you can actually live with that and turn it into a decent conversation and maintain really good relationships without having exactly the same points of view. So closed-mindedness is not a killer. So those are the 6 main barriers that cause us not to listen well, that cause us to have low retention, and that force us more over into the 700 words a minute land instead of the 100 words a minute land. So what can we do? Oh no, I didn't get to the 6th one yet, did I? Selective listening. This is another one that we do. The thing I put up here is a really good example of what selective listening is. So I got called pretty today. Well, actually, the full sentence was, "You're pretty annoying, but I only focus on the positive things." So they slashed off the annoying and somebody called him pretty. You know, it's funny, but in reality, there are a lot of people who do that. It's kids who are masters of it, right? Can I go out and play? And your mom says, you go out and play after you do your homework. And all you hear is, you can go out and play, and off you go out and play. And they're like, where did you go? What are you doing? Well, you said I could play. I said you could play after your homework. Oh, all I heard was I could go play. That's selective listening. We only hear and retain the things that we like or the things that agree with our point of view. That means our retention is going to be way low, right? Just like our normal retention is horrible. When we select what we want to hear, then that's all that we focus on. And this is one you see a lot. Sometimes in politics, you'll see it. Sometimes in regular conversations, kids, the example I said, are really good at using this one. So you only look for the phrases you want to hear, and you ignore all the rest, and you act on them. And I'm trying to think of another example. You say, yeah, I believe in aliens about as much as I believe I can fly. And all they hear is, you believe in aliens. And so then everything is about, they believe in aliens. Can you believe it? That's all. They really do believe in aliens. They miss all that other stuff. That's selective listening, because they're only looking for certain things. This again is a barrier, because if they're selective listening and they're only focused on what they want to hear, you can have a whole lot more information and it goes right by them. No retention of that stuff they didn't want to hear, only what they want to hear. And then they'll stand by what they want to hear, what they wanted to hear as being the only thing you said. So it creates another problem. So you have to really work with selective listening and, no, that's not what I said. What I said was, and this is a harder one to deal with than closed-mindedness is, actually, because they will genuinely only retain the stuff that they like and the stuff that they want to hear. So that's the 6 barriers to listening. So what we want to focus on then is, how do we get better? Well, we talked a little bit about how you overcome some of these barriers, right? Different ones, you'd use a little bit different tactics. Some of the tactics work on multiple barriers when you realize those barriers are out there. But there is a way, there are several ways actually, to improve on our listening. The main one is active listening. And I've talked about it some today. I've talked about it some on Monday. It's getting above that 100 words a minute, paying, not just passive, sitting back and having the words come in, or the sound waves come in our brains, kind of interpret it, and we're not really involved, and we're off in the 700 words a minute land too. So we're listening to them, and we're watching stuff going on in the background, and we're watching TV, but we're looking at our social media at the same time. So we're not really doing either one. Active listening means you purposely try to focus on the speaker, and you do things like ask questions about the things they say, ask for more detail, or paraphrase. Okay, so if what I'm hearing is correct, this is what I'm hearing, is this right? And then you kind of paraphrase back to them what you think they mean. It takes more brain power to do that. So now we're more engaged, we're more involved in paying attention and listening better, and we tend to retain better. Plus, if you're doing that, paraphrase back to them what you think you understood, then you're getting into repetition of the same information, and our mind remembers things we hear over and over and over. So that's active listening. It is trying, you can never listen at the 800 words a minute speed, because we can't, even auctioneers only talk at 250 words a minute, which is way short of the 800, but it does involve being more active than just sitting there like a lump and letting the sound waves come in your ears. You're engaging and asking questions and commenting and thinking about to yourself how you feel about what they're talking about and that kind of thing. This clip that I'm going to show you is a man named Julian Treasure, and he is obsessed with listening, and he talks a lot and writes books about how do we become better listeners. And so he's going to talk a bit about barriers and noise and why we aren't very good listeners. And then he's going to present 5 different ways that work to help us become better listeners. And in my workplace communication class, I actually tie an assignment to this. So I have my students pick one of the 5 ways that he talks about in this video and practice it for 5 days, and then write a short paper about what they experienced. Did they notice a change? And about 90% of the time, students will notice an improvement in their listening by using one of these. And they even say, I'm going to continue doing this even after the assignment because I'm finding this to be really useful. So this is very practical, useful stuff that does work. And we'll talk a little bit more afterwards.
We are losing our listening. We spend roughly 60% of our communication time listening, but we're not very good at it. We retain just 25% of what we hear. Now, not you, not this talk, but that is generally true. Let's define listening as making meaning from sound. It's a mental process, and it's a process of extraction. We use some pretty cool techniques to do this. One of them is pattern recognition. So in a cocktail party like this, if I say, David, Sarah, pay attention, some of you just sat up. We recognize patterns to distinguish noise from signal, and especially our name. Differencing is another technique we use. If I left this pink noise on for more than a couple of minutes, you would literally cease to hear it. We listen to differences, we discount sounds that remain the same. And then there is a whole range of filters. These filters take us from all sound down to what we pay attention to. Most people are entirely unconscious of these filters, but they actually create our reality in a way because they tell us what we're paying attention to right now. I'll give you one example of that. Intention is very important in sound, in listening. When I married my wife, I promised her that I would listen to her every day as if for the first time. Now that's something I fall short of on a daily basis. But it's a great intention to have in a relationship. But that's not all. Sound places us in space and in time. If you close your eyes right now in this room, you're aware of the size of the room from the reverberation and the bouncing of the sound off the surfaces. And you're aware of how many people are around you because of the micro noises you're receiving. And sound places us in time as well, because sound always has time embedded in it. In fact, I would suggest that our listening is the main way that we experience the flow of time from past to future. So, sonority is time and meaning, a great quote. I said at the beginning, we're losing our listening. Why did I say that? Well, there are a lot of reasons for this. First of all, we invented ways of recording. First, writing, then audio recording, and now video recording as well. The premium on accurate and careful listening has simply disappeared. Secondly, the world is now so noisy, with this cacophony going on visually and auditorily, it's just hard to listen. It's tiring to listen. Many people take refuge in headphones, but they turn big public spaces like this, shared soundscapes, into millions of tiny little personal sound bubbles. In this scenario, nobody's listening to anybody. We're becoming impatient. We don't want oratory anymore, we want sound bites. And the art of conversation is being replaced, dangerously, I think, by personal broadcasting. I don't know how much listening there is in this conversation, which is sadly very common, especially in the UK. We're becoming desensitized. Our media have to scream at us with these kind of headlines in order to get our attention. And that means it's harder for us to pay attention to the quiet, the subtle, the understated. This is a serious problem that we're losing our listening. This is not trivial, because listening is our access to understanding. Conscious listening always creates understanding, and only without conscious listening can these things happen. A world where we don't listen to each other at all is a very scary place indeed. So I'd like to share with you 5 simple exercises, tools you can take away with you to improve your own conscious listening. Would you like that? Good. The first one is silence. Just 3 minutes a day of silence is a wonderful exercise to reset your ears and to recalibrate so that you can hear the quiet again. If you can't get absolute silence, go for quiet. That's absolutely fine. Second, I call this the mixer. So even if you're in a noisy environment like this, and we all spend a lot of time in places like this, listen in the coffee bar to how many channels of sound can I hear? How many individual channels in that mix am I listening to? You can do it in a beautiful place as well, like a lake. How many birds am I hearing? Where are they? Where are those ripples? It's a great exercise for improving the quality of your listening. Third, this exercise I call savoring, and this is a beautiful exercise. It's about enjoying mundane sounds. This, for example, is my tumble dryer. It's a waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I love it. Or just try this one on for size. Wow. So mundane sounds can be really interesting if you pay attention. I call that the hidden choir. It's around us all the time. The next exercise is probably the most important of all of these. If you just take one thing away, this is listening positions. The idea that you can move your listening position to what's appropriate to what you're listening to. This is playing with those filters. You remember I gave you those filters at the beginning? It's starting to play with them as levers, to get conscious about them and to move to different places. These are just some of the listening positions or scales of listening positions that you can use. There are many. Have fun with that. It's very exciting. And finally, an acronym. You can use this in listening, in communication. If you're in any one of those roles, and I think that probably is everybody who's listening to this talk. The acronym is RASA, which is the Sanskrit word for juice or essence. And rasa stands for receive, which means pay attention to the person, appreciate, making little noises like, oh, okay. Summarize, the word so is very important in communication, and ask questions afterwards. Now, sound is my passion, it's my life. I wrote a whole book about it, so I live to listen. That's too much to ask for most people. But I believe that every human being needs to listen consciously in order to live fully, connected in space and in time to the physical world around us, connected in understanding to each other, not to mention spiritually connected, because every spiritual path I know of has listening and contemplation at its heart. That's why we need to teach listening in our schools as a skill. Why is it not taught? It's crazy. And if we can teach listening in our schools, we can take our listening off that slippery slope to that dangerous, scary world that I talked about and move it to a place where everybody is consciously listening all the time, or at least capable of doing it. Now, I don't know how to do that, but this is TED. And I think the TED community is capable of anything. So I invite you to connect with me, connect with each other, take this mission out, and let's get listening taught in schools and transform the world in one generation to a conscious listening world, a world of connection, a world of understanding, and a world of peace.
For listening to me today.
He brings up some very good ways of improving your conscious listening. I like that term, conscious listening. He talked about the listening positions, and I've alluded to them within this whole discussion Monday and today. Passive listening, just sitting there and taking in sound waves and not really being involved. That's where we reside most of the time when we're listening. But active listening, conscious listening, purposely trying to get an understanding of what the person's talking about, being involved in the conversation, more than just sitting there and let the sound waves come in, ask, and all of that kind of stuff. That can really be a big help in meaningful communication. As I said, I assign this in my workplace communication. I haven't done it in this class. I always consider it, and then I haven't actually done it yet. But they always pick, a couple of them will pick the listening position thing. So you're looking at passive versus active, or this one's really important, critical versus empathic. So you can't listen for empathy, use an empathic, my tongue's not working today, empathic listening, and be critical at the same time. Because empathic listening is listening to understand, listening to see how someone feels. And you can't do that if you're analyzing what they're talking about and trying to fix a problem. And so thinking when you're in a conversation, is this a situation where I'm trying to solve a problem? Or is this a situation where they need to have somebody listen to them? Because sometimes we just need to talk and have somebody listen. Is this one of those where they need me to listen and understand and appreciate how they feel and not help them? And learning how to understand which kind of position do I need to be in right now, and then putting yourself in that position. And most of the students that do this assignment pick the 3 minutes of silence, because we are, and as he did it so brilliantly, showed all that sound that we're bombarded with all the time. They'll take 3 minutes, and some of them struggle at first, because if you think about it, you're going to sit there in the quiet for 3 minutes. This is almost like trying to meditate, and meditating at first is 5 minutes seems like a year, because it's quiet, you're focused on breathing, and that's it. In this exercise, you get away from all of the sound and just enjoy the quiet for 3 minutes. And I've had people say they were amazed at how much sound was still going on in what they thought was a quiet room. You know, a lot of phones have a decibel meter. Walk into a quiet room and turn on your decibel meter and see how many decibels it is, because it's usually higher than you think it's going to be, because we've become so used to sound. So they take this 3 minutes of silence, and they say that it seems to help them when they are having a conversation, because they can focus more. And some of that has to do with the fact that you have decompressed a little bit and shut down your ears for a minute and given them a rest, and that helps it. The other one that really a lot of people use, and I'm going to ask, does anybody remember what the acronym was that he used in that speech? This is where I find out how many of you are still here.
Was it RASA?
It was RASA, RASA.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Do you remember what each one of them stands for?
I do not. I just remembered that.
Hey, you're doing good. A lot of times people don't even remember what the acronym was.
Receive was for the R.
Right?
One was ask. The last one was ask.
The last one is ask. There's an AS in the middle.
Remember the word so, but it's that wasn't the.
No, but it's close. And if you want to distort English a little bit, it's summarize or summarize.
Summarize. Okay.
Yeah. And the first A, it's actually, I'll give you a hint, it's one of the 4 kinds of listening.
Active.
Appreciate.
Appreciate. Okay.
Yeah. So it's receive, appreciate, summarize, and ask. That's the core of active listening.
That
Huh?
literally was in my head. I was gonna say it, but I couldn't remember, so I didn't say it.
Yeah, that darn 25% retention.
I know, right?
But you consciously are receiving the message, that you're paying attention, you're focused on what they're saying, and you summarize it maybe in your mind, you summarize it back to them, like sometimes paraphrasing it back. So what I think you're saying is this: appreciate what they're saying. Consider, even if you don't agree with it, consider with what they're saying and ask questions about it. Be more involved. That's active listening. And by doing that, we actually improve the communication between us, which of course is the goal of interpersonal communication, right? To build stronger relationships, because that's what interpersonal communication was, the communication that occurs that builds relationships between 2 people. Well, that's what we're after. There's a chat question, and I didn't have chat open. So you want to try to use one of those, and I would suggest that you do actually try one of these. It's not part of an assignment. but it really does seem to make a difference. The minutes of silence is one that I meditate anyway. And I find that to be extremely refreshing. You know, go into a room, sit in the silence, I spend about 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes in the quiet, thinking really about nothing. It's hard to do, but thinking about nothing and just decompressing. And you're amazed at how more energized you are when you come out of that. And it can really help with having a conversation. So that's one of the ways that we increase our listening ability. The next one is becoming more of a critical listener. This is one I really wish we did a lot more of, because especially, and I see it on social media a lot, here's an example, and I can't remember exactly, this is several years ago, somebody had up a picture and it was a person standing next to an animal laying on the ground. And you looked at the person and you knew who it was. It was Steven Spielberg. And the caption below it said, Steven Spielberg kills the last some kind of rhino. And they were trying to elicit a response out of it, right? And I'm watching the number of people, I'm watching on this thing, I'm watching the shares, because the shares are always interesting. And the number of people that see that and they go, oh my God, that's terrible. And they click share and they put it on their timeline and they don't even investigate it at all. That's similar to being a passive listener, right? It comes in and you just, oh my God, and you just repeat it back out without thinking about what you're talking about. And in that particular case, when you go in and analyze it, what you find out it is Steven Spielberg, but he's standing next to one of the robot dummies they used when they made Jurassic Park. So it's actually a fake dinosaur, not the last rhinoceros or whatever they said it was. And being a critical listener, being a critical type thinker means that you look at that and you go, I don't think that's what that's showing. Wait a minute. And then you investigate and you find out what it actually is. It forces you to be more involved in a listening standpoint in what you're listening to. So as you are hearing somebody talk, evaluate, how do you feel about it? Does that sound like it makes sense? Is it real? Or could they only be presenting, maybe they're one of those people that only hears what they want to hear, and that's what you're hearing was that part of it that they retained because they liked that part and they leave the other parts out. And this kind of a listening type problem exists all over the place. We see this one on all kinds of social media platforms. I've heard it in conversations over very heated topics. People are parroting back things they've heard from other people without really analyzing it. And you can gain a whole lot from analyzing what you hear and really thinking about, does that make sense? How do I feel about that? Do I agree? Do I need more information? This here over here, what does that mean? Tell me a little bit more about it. Now you're much more involved in the listening process and you're analyzing it and you're engaging this thing more. Get that brain more involved and thinking about, does that make sense? And it's amazing how much it improves our understanding of things when we actually investigate it for ourselves rather than just take what we hear to be true. And it works on social media and that kind of stuff. It works in our listening worlds. It works when you're listening to the news and all of that kind of stuff, because almost everything has some sort of bias to it. So you need to listen and engage and figure out, okay, is that the whole story or is there more of the story somewhere, and that kind of thing. That's what critical listening is. You're going to do a little critical listening test right now. This will be the first time I've done this in the virtual world, so we'll see how well this works. But listen to all the way through the clip and then see if you can answer the question.
This is a critical listening activity. You'll be asked to listen to a paragraph and at the end, respond to a question. You can take notes if you would like. Let's begin. You are the driver of a school bus. On the first stop at 6:40 a.m., there are 5 students to pick up on the corner of 2nd and Warren. On the second stop at 6:50 a.m., there are 10 students to pick up on the corner of 3rd and Prentice. On the third and final stop at 7:05 a.m., there are 15 students to pick up on the corner of 5th and Alexandrian. A total of 30 students are dropped off at their local high school on the corner of 8th and West Wilson at 7:25 a.m. What is the age of the bus driver?
Okay, what's the answer?
Might be crazy, but I think I heard her say 30. Or no, maybe she didn't even say it. Honestly, I was so caught up in how specific she was being with the street signs and numbers of kids that frankly I take back my answer.
So now you don't even think it's 30.
Maybe that's the only thing I could come to mind with. I don't know.
Okay, that's a fair answer. Noah put in the chat box that no clue. Anybody else want to guess? All right. I'll let you listen to it again.
This is a critical listening activity. You'll be asked to listen to a paragraph and at the end, respond to a question. You can take notes if you would like. Let's begin. You are the driver of a school bus. On the first stop at 6:40 a.m., there are 5 students to pick up on the corner of 2nd and Warren. On the second stop at 6:50 a.m., there are 10 students to pick up on the corner of 3rd and Prentice. On the third and final stop at 7:05 a.m., there are 15 students to pick up on the corner of 5th and Alexandrian. A total of 30 students are dropped off at their local high school on the corner of 8th and West Wilson at 7:25 a.m. What is the age of the bus driver?
Okay, any takers this time?
It might sound crazy, but she said we are the driver. So would it be based off of our age?
That is correct.
So like, since I'm 20, the bus driver would be 20.
Yep, that's
Okay.
exactly what it is. And Noah got
I was going crazy. Like, wait, is that right or wrong?
That's correct. The very first sentence is you are driving a bus.
Okay.
So it's whatever age you are. And then of course everybody gets caught up in the streets and the people that are getting on and all of that kind of stuff. And
Well, that's what happened with me in the first time. I was paying attention with the amount of kids in the street signs.
yeah, and you weren't alone. Noah put up no clue, and then later on he put, 19. Yeah. Yeah. So you've got to really pay attention to everything and not do that tendency we all have to jump ahead and think we know where this conversation is going. That's another barrier, right? We anticipate ahead of time what somebody's going to say, and then somehow we get it in our head that that's where we're going, and we end up missing all kinds of stuff, and our retention is horrible. So you guys, I'm amazed this worked because none of those tests on Monday worked with you guys, but I'm pleased that this one did it. So it's the first sentence that she says, you are driving a bus.
This is a critical listening activity. You'll be asked to listen to a paragraph and at the end, respond to a question. You can take notes if you would like. Let's begin. You are the driver of a school bus.
That's the whole thing right there. You are a driver of a school bus. But it's an element we miss because we think, oh God, you can take notes. I got to get a piece of paper and a pencil out and add all these numbers up and all this stuff. And we get caught up. That 700 words a minute takes over our brain. And we assume we know what we're going to have to do. And we miss critical things like you're the driver of a school bus. So we need to practice more critical listening. And then the last one is become more of an empathic listener. And if you remember back the 4 kinds of listening, empathic's one of the 4. And it involves listening to appreciate how the person feels, listening to understand the feelings of the speaker. And that's the whole focus. And for some of us, mostly men, this is a nightmare to do because we're wired to fix problems. So we hear somebody talking about, oh, my day was terrible, blah, 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 blah. And our minds are going, okay, you could fix it with this, and you should try this, and you could do this. And that's not it at all. And that ends up leading to a fight, or, two people being very unhappy with each other because the first person who needed to have somebody listen feels like you're not even listening to me. All you're doing is trying to fix a problem. And that's not what empathic listening is. But empathic listening is understanding how the person feels. And as a male, I know it was very hard for me to understand this whole process of empathic listening because we're not wired that way. And women are much better at this. But fortunately, the TV show Modern Family actually built an episode around empathic listening. And this clip you're about to see is him learning what empathic listening is, and you see him actually put it into practice. Now, granted, it's a comedy, it's meant to be funny, but the process that's demonstrated here is very real. And when you see it, you go, I get it. I understand. It's not easy to do, but I understand it. So I'm going to show you the clip.
I'm thinking of getting bangs.
Ooh, you totally should. You would be so cute with bangs. You have the face for it. I don't. Oh, there's my better half. Kim, would you mind? Thank you. Hey, honey, where are you?
Oh, I'm on my way to Downey.
Oh, did you know Karen and Richard Carpenter grew up in Downey?
What a random and not helpful fact, Phil. I'm sorry. I'm having kind of a rough day.
Yeah, I'm kind of having a rough day myself.
Look, Phil, I need you to take care of dinner for me.
What's wrong?
Oh, Alex ripped Haley's favorite sweater, and now I'm driving around from store to store trying to find the exact same one before Haley finds out.
Don't do that. Just explain to her what happened.
Haley's not gonna understand.
Sure she will.
No, Phil, you don't understand. I'm trying to avoid this turning into a whole big thing.
And just get her something close. She'll never know the difference.
Phil, could you just take care of dinner, sweetie? That's all I'm asking. That's it.
I'm just saying there's a simpler way to do this.
There is no simpler way. Just make dinner. Thank you.
Hello? What? Okay, I'm confused. You're saying that if she tells me she has a problem, I'm not supposed to help her?
Not unless she asks for your help.
But if she lets me help her, I can make her problem go away.
That is such a male thing to say.
Well, forgive me for being a man.
Mango or kiwi?
Ooh, kiwi.
When you say, do this or do that, all she's hearing is, I'm smarter than you.
Believe me, she doesn't think that.
She doesn't want you to solve her problems. She just wants you to give her support so that she can solve her problems herself.
Yes, and sometimes she just wants a sympathetic ear.
Whoa. Whoa. Maybe it's all the creams, but that just made sense, girlfriends. So if Claire says, I hate getting stuck in traffic, I shouldn't say, maybe you should leave earlier, or don't get on the freeway. I should just say, I know, it's so frustrating.
Yes. That's
Really?
Yes.
And if she says, the waiter I had today was so rude, I shouldn't say, maybe you should just order something on the menu for once.
No.
I should just say, what a jerk.
Yes.
And if she says, Phil, the TV's driving me crazy, I should just say, I know, there is not enough quality programming for women.
No. Turn off the damn TV.
Okay, now I'm confused again.
She back yet?
She's on her way. Did you find it?
I did. At the 5th store I went to, it was in the window, and I had to undress a mannequin while a creepy guy filmed it, so we have that to look forward to on the internet.
Thank you so much, Mom.
You're welcome. Now go put that exactly where you found the other one, okay? Okay. Mwah.
Uh-oh.
What?
The security tag, it's still on.
I told those people to take that off. Oh, no.
She's pulling into the driveway.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Don't panic. I've got it.
She's getting out of the car.
Right, you're doing it. I've almost got it. Oh, God. Oh, no.
What is that?
Well, it's ink.
She's in the house. What are you doing with my sweater? Oh my God, it's ruined. It was an accident. I knew this would happen, you idiot.
Hey, let's try to get along.
I wish she was never even born. They were trying to make one with a brain.
No, honey, you guys are both pretty smart.
Ah. It's that sweater, huh?
Yeah. It is. That sweater. And I did everything I can to stop them from fighting.
I don't understand why they can't see how much you love them.
I don't know. Meanwhile, Cheryl has been calling me all day because she's angry I didn't show up.
Doesn't Cheryl have a housekeeper and a nanny? Why does she need so much help?
I know, right?
You work so hard. You do so much.
I do.
Of course you do.
I do. Oh, sweetie, thank you. I really appreciate that.
It does a really good job of showing empathic listening, that since they say she's wanting you to show support, not fix it. And that's a very important part of empathic listening, showing support for the person, showing understand for how they feel, and that's it. That's all they're looking for. He makes that comment when he's trying to fix the sweater thing, and he goes, well, just buy something close, they'll never notice. That's looking at it from his point of view because he would never notice, right? It's the same color, it's close enough. Yeah, I think it's the same thing. And it wouldn't matter. But to other people, you've got to listen to it from the other person's standpoint and appreciate how they feel and just be understanding and supportive. In my own life, that's really difficult sometimes because I was an engineer for 30 years, so that's fixing problems, right? And my wife, and we've been married like 9,000 years. My wife comes home, and if she's had a really bad day, she's going to want to talk about her day, and she's going to get this stress and stuff off of her shoulders. And my job is to listen and support, and that's it. And it's a real struggle for me because I spent 30 years trying to fix problems. And so she starts telling me the stuff, and I want to say, well, did you try this? You should try that. And it's just like, the ladies told Phil, you're telling her you're smarter than her, and that's going to tick them off. And that's not what you're after. Empathic listening is just being supportive. And you see him at the end do that. I don't understand why they don't see how much you do for them. And that's more of a supportive type situation, more of a supportive comment, and not getting into here's how you fix that situation. So empathic listening, especially for some, is a lot harder. It makes you be more engaged and think about how this is making the person feel and let them talk and be a sympathetic ear and stop at that point and not try to fix it and solve problems. That's not what it's about. But it does actually help improve relationships. And over time with my wife, she comes home and sometimes she has to talk for an hour to get it out of her system. And I listen. And then I've learned that really does help in the long run. Our relationship is better because she knows I'm going to listen to her, and I'm not going to tell her what she did wrong or what she should have done or anything like that. Just listen and be supportive. And it makes a world of difference in a relationship. And we'll talk about this more as we get into about week 6, week 7, and relationships. The other thing that's important with listening, and remember, it's not just listening with your ears. Sometimes we're listening with our eyes too. Especially next week when we get into nonverbal, we're going to find out there's all this nonverbal messaging going on that we need to pay attention to. And most of receiving that is visual, not hearing. But a lot of times it's important to pay attention to what's not said than what is said. And that involves more active listening. Yeah, you're telling me this, but there's some other stuff in there that you haven't mentioned that's going on too, or that it seems like would be going on too. So you have to really pay attention to the stuff that's said, and also sometimes the stuff that's not said, and all the nonverbal cues that are coming at you that could be altering the words themselves. And a really good example is the words "I'm fine." That can be taken a lot of different ways, right? My wife could come home and I could say, "How was your day?" or "How are you feeling?" And she could say, "Oh, I'm fine." And I know from the way she said it that she's fine. She's having a good day. But if she comes home and I say, "How you doing?" and she goes, "I'm fine," I know she is not fine. So those are those nonverbal cues that alter the words, and it implies the meaning. And so you have to pay attention to the not said stuff and then nonverbal cues as much as you need to pay attention to the message. Okay. So that's listening. Now, it's after 3. I don't want to start nonverbal today because we've only got about a half an hour to go. But let's do another listening test, except this one is going to be, instead of you listening to stuff and trying to figure it out, this is based off of what we talked about Monday and today about listening. So we're gonna find out how well you listened to me and how much you retained of what I've just talked about today and on Monday. So you're gonna see a bunch of questions pop up here in a minute. You're gonna see questions pop up, and just for fun, let's say that don't answer these in chat because it's too hard to do a tiebreaker in chat. So as these questions come up, if you know the answer, turn your mic on and answer it. The first person that answers each question gets 5 points extra credit. How's that sound? Good? Fair? Is anybody there?
Good. Yes, that was good.
All right, so one at a time. Here's the first question. What percentage of our awake time do we spend listening?
25%.
How much?
25%.
Nope, that is not correct.
Dang it.
Is it 60?
Who is that?
Oh.
Rika?
Rika? Oh, the square didn't light up on your name. 60 is correct. Well, if I can get this stupid thing to work. Oh, it's over here.
I remember you like talking about it. I think it was like on Monday or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
But
I talked about it on Monday.
Have 60% when I wake up because I don't remember a lot of things.
You remembered that. Of course, that might mean you don't remember anything else from the day.
Probably.
We'll see. Okay, so she's got 5 points. Next question. What are the 4 kinds of listening? Oh man, I'm going to have to go get a new job.
Active, empathic, comprehensive, and critical.
Is she right?
Well, I just Googled it.
Well,
and that-
I guess I didn't include information.
You were close. I'll give you that one. You said informational, empathic, and critical, but you said active instead of appreciative.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's close enough.
You got 75% out of that answer.
4 points. I'll settle for 4 points.
All right. You just talked me out of 5.
Okay.
See, I'm listening. I'll give you one less. All right. Next question. How much of what we listen to do we retain?
25%.
That was Bridget again, wasn't it? And the answer is 25%. I'll give you all 5 for that one.
Yay.
All right, the next question. I really expected Noah to do that since he answered that answer on the other question.
I just answered it really early. I was the
I know
first
that's
one.
what I thought too.
I was the first one to answer that one, just 2 questions early.
You had ESPN and knew I was going to ask it later, right?
The sports one?
ESP, the mind thing.
Oh, yeah.
I always throw the N in there just to be funny. What is the processing rate in words per minute of the brain of the average human?
100.
No.
Is it
600.
you go?
No.
You go.
800.
Who said that?
Me.
It's not lighting up. So I can't see who it is. What was your name?
Who? W-U.
Ah, okay. Okay. Because the answer is 800. Very good. So there's 5 points. I don't know why. Usually the little yellow square pops up on who's talking and I can track it that way real easily, but it's not seeming to do that very well. All right, next question. What is the attention span of this animal?
6 seconds.
No.
7?
8 seconds.
Noah got it first.
Yes.
7 seconds.
My goal was to get at least one, so W.
You've achieved, well, you sort of got 2. You just answered it too early.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Next question. What is pretending to listen when you actually are not called?
I don't even remember that one.
It's grazing, but I can let me think. I can give you a more legitimate term.
I know there's glazed, but it's the one we learned about before that, and I can't remember.
Glazed over is not it.
I'm lost on that one.
I remember talking about it. I don't
Passive, is
remember.
it? Is it
Pseudo listening. Pseudo listening.
I'm listening to the dog and 2 grandchildren at the same time. I'm trying to listen to you. I swear. Plus
That's
the alarm
tough.
going on.
That is tough. All right, so no one got that one. There's still hope. There's still questions out there. What is the speaking rate in words per minute of the average human?
Is that one 600 or 100? I don't know. Something around there. In between that.
I'm going to give you the 100, but what did you say the first time? 1,600?
I said 600 first. And then I was like, nah, that's too many.
Wait, is it
150? Is that 150?
100. Noah got it. After he said 600.
It's all right. I just answered first twice.
Yeah, but I thought the first time you said, is it 106, 16? And I thought, wow, 1,600? No.
Well, I was saying 600, and then I was like, yeah, that's definitely not 600. So I switched it real quick.
Yeah, because an auctioneer only speaks at about 250.
Yeah.
And we're all slower than that. So yeah, 100 was the actual one. And you said that first. So I'll give you that one. So now you've gotten 2. You beat your goal.
Set goals low, and you always beat them.
All right, here's the next one. What is the attention span of this animal?
10 seconds.
6.
No.
Dang it.
3.
8,
3 seconds.
No.
8,
15.
Row.
7,
9
One.
seconds.
What did you say, Ramona?
Row.
No.
9 seconds.
9. Who said 9?
Me.
It is 9 seconds. Remember, they have a better attention span than we do, which is sad to admit, but it's true.
That's very sad.
Yes, we had quite the discussion on that. All right. What is it called when we are bombarded with so many messages that we can't figure out what to pay attention to and what to ignore?
Information overload.
Information overload. Who said that?
Me, Addie.
Addie. Information overload is correct. Yay! All right, one more, I think. What is this called?
glazing.
Glazed over listening.
Yeah, Rika got it first. Glazing.
Dang it.
Sorry, guys.
No, good job.
Glazing over. Isn't that picture sick? This is, you remember I showed you my coat of arms and my great Power or Microsoft Paint ability? I did this in, I think I did this in Microsoft Paint as well. Or yeah, I had to have done it. And I pasted eyes on top of this guy's eyes were originally closed. That's why he has no eyelashes up here and it's so creepy.
It looks good, but I might have some creepy nightmare dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured. I have creepy nightmares and I made it, so I know how you feel. All right, next question. What is having your mind made up and not being willing to hear another opinion called?
Closed-mindedness.
That is correct, Addie. Closed-mindedness. What is it called when we are so busy thinking about a response that we don't even listen? Oh man, I'm gonna have to go get a new job. Nobody? We talked about this one today.
I can see the
Yes,
cartoon. I can see the cartoon that you had up there, but I can't.
What?
Rebuttal tendency.
Rebuttal tendency. Who said that?
Me, Addie.
Addie again. Rebuttal tendency is correct. And that was the last question. All right. So not too bad. Maybe I can keep my job. Maybe I don't have to quit yet. Anybody got any questions or anything? All right, so I'm not going to get into nonverbal. We will talk about nonverbal next week. It will be both days, and there will be a little bit of additional stuff that I've got to figure out how I'm going to do it, but I think I'm going to do an offline lecture for that. So I will. Has anybody taken the quiz already?
For this week, no, I don't think so.
This week, yeah. So then what I will do, don't take the quiz yet. Give me about an hour. I'm going to go in and modify it because I'm going to take the nonverbal part out of the quiz. Because originally I had planned on covering it. And of course, that was when we were face to face and I would be able to cover more in one day. So I will alter the quiz, then you can go in and take it. So you've got just the homework for this weekend to do. And that's it. And like I said, we will get into nonverbal next week. Nonverbal is a lot of fun. And if nobody's got any questions, or if you do come up with something later, shoot me an email. Have a great weekend, and I will see you all. Go ahead. Did somebody have a question?
Yeah, I do. It's just because I wasn't able to come to class Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just chapter 6. Then that's going to be on the quiz. Is that? No, wait a minute. That's the nonverbal.
That sounds. I will take the nonverbal stuff off the quiz. Yes, I will take that off the quiz because we haven't covered it yet. And I'll put that chapter in for next week. So I've got to go make a slight modification to the quiz. So it'll just be over listening.
Okay, and all the information for the paper is in the instructions on the syllabus and
yes,
all that for this paper, for the paper that's due.
Yes, should be.
Okay. And you did get my email where I wasn't going to be here Monday, didn't you?
I may not remember it.
Okay, I just wanted.
Oh, I don't have my email up because I don't want it beeping me. I will look, Ramona. I don't remember. I'm writing a note down so that I will look it up.
Someone said that they already took the quiz. Their microphone's not working though.
Oh.
Okay. Someone in chat then.
Oh, that didn't make the. Oh, Akira. That means the extra points weren't an option. Okay. Okay. You'll be able, Akira. You'll be able to go in and take it again. Just hang on about an hour. So let me make the adjustment. And you can take it again. And what the system's going to do is if you take it again and don't do as well, it's still going to give you the higher grade. Okay. Cool. And yours didn't work. All right. And Ramona, I'll check your email and I'll email you back on that. So I did not catch that.
Okay. I sent it like last Saturday, I think. Because I was moving on Monday.
Well, see, then I've slept more than one time since then, so I don't remember.
Okay.
But I will. I'll shoot you an email back about that because that'll affect your coat of arms assignment too.
Right. Okay.
Anybody else? Nobody else? All right. Have a great weekend. I will see you on Monday.
You too.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.